We often mistake acceptance for giving up. The idea of Stoic acceptance is widely misunderstood as a quiet surrender, a passive resignation to whatever life throws our way. It sounds like letting go of the reins, which feels like the very opposite of taking control. This video will show you how to transform that misconception into a powerful source of personal agency. How is it possible that accepting what you cannot control actually gives you more control? What if the key to greater power lies not in fighting reality, but in seeing it with clear eyes first? What does true strength look like when it is not fueled by resistance? This common misunderstanding is the very thing that keeps us feeling powerless. When we hear the word acceptance, especially in difficult times, often translated to mean surrender, we think it means we have to agree with what happened, to like it, or to simply stop caring. We confuse it with indifference, a kind of emotional numbness where we shrug our shoulders and say, well, it is what it is. But in that casual phrase lies the heart of the confusion. In our everyday use, it is what it is a sigh of resignation. It is the sound of giving up, of closing the book because the effort to change the story feels too great. It implies a passive endpoint. The Stoics, however, meant something radically different. For them, acceptance was not an endpoint at all. It was the starting line. It was the clear-eyed, unflinching act of looking at reality exactly as it is, without the filter of your wish that it were otherwise. This is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending you are not hurt or disappointed. It is about refusing to spend your precious energy arguing with a fact. Think of it this way. If you are driving and you get a flat tire, the defeatist version of it is what it is might lead you to just sit in the car, frustrated, complaining about your bad luck. Stoic acceptance is the moment you stop mentally arguing with the flat tire. You see it, you acknowledge the delay and the hassle, and then you get out and open the trunk to get the spare. One reaction traps you in a powerless loop of protest. The other, though it begins with accepting an unwanted reality, immediately restores your ability to act. The barrier is that we see the flat tire and think acceptance means approving of the flat tire. It does not. It means acknowledging its existence so completely that you can now do something about it. That shift from resisting what is to engaging with what is where your true agency has been hiding all along. This framework is the map that makes sense of the entire journey. The ancient teacher Epictetus drew a single, clear line through the chaos of human experience. He called it the dichotomy of control. On one side of that line are the things that are up to us. These are our own judgments, our intentions, our desires, and the actions we choose to take right now. They are internal, they belong to us completely, and they are the only things we can ever truly command. On the other side of the line is everything else: the weather, the traffic, what other people say or think about us, the stock market, events that have already happened. These are external, they operate by their own rules, and they are not up to us. Most of our frustration and sense of powerlessness comes from a simple error. We keep trying to control what is on the wrong side of the line. We exhaust ourselves trying to manage other people's opinions. We rage against a past we cannot change. We worry endlessly about future outcomes we can influence but never guarantee. It is like trying to command the wind to stop blowing. You can shout at it, you can build a wall against it, but the wind does not listen. Your only real choice is to adjust your sails. Stoic acceptance applies solely to that second category, to everything that is not up to us. It is the act of looking at the wind, acknowledging its strength and direction without complaint, and then turning your effort entirely toward what is up to you. Moving the sails, this is not passive. It is the most active redirection of energy possible. You stop fighting the unwinnable battle against the external world, and you pour all of your focus, your creativity, and your will into the one arena where you are the absolute authority. Your own mind and your own next move. Think of a chess player. They cannot control their opponent's strategy. They cannot undo a move they have already made. What is up to them is their assessment of the current board, their decision about the next piece to move, and their focus for the rest of the game. To waste energy being angry about their opponent's last move or wishing the board looked different is to forfeit their power in the present moment. Acceptance is seeing the board as it is, not as you wish it were, so you can play your best game from here. The power lies in that precise, disciplined focus. When you stop demanding that the uncontrollable conform to your will, you reclaim all the energy you were wasting and invest it where it can actually grow. Your agency was never about controlling the world. It was always about mastering your response to it, and that mastery begins with a simple, courageous act of seeing what is truly yours. The chessboard is set and the pieces are in motion, but who exactly is the player making the moves? For the Stoics, this was the most important question of all, and their answer was a single Greek word, prohairesis. This is not a word we use today, but the idea it points to is the very core of your personal power. Prohairesis is your faculty of choice, your inner command center. It is not your emotions which can flare up like weather. It is not your automatic desires or impulses. It is your capacity to step back, to reason, and to decide what you will assent to and how you will respond. Think of it as the quiet, observant captain standing on the bridge of a ship. The storm rages outside, the waves crash against the hull. These are the external events, the things not up to you. The captain cannot stop the storm, but the captain can assess the situation, consult the maps, and give the orders to adjust course, to secure the hatches, to steer through the turbulence. That act of assessment and command, that is the prohairesis in action. Your agency, then, is not measured by whether you reach calm seas. It is measured by the excellence of your captaincy in the midst of the storm. This reframes everything. We often tie our sense of control to results. Did I get the job? Did they like my idea? Did the situation turn out as I planned? When we do this, we hand our agency over to the external world, making it a prize that others grant us or that circumstances provide. The Stoic view reclaims it as an internal practice, a skill you cultivate regardless of the outcome. Agency becomes the quality of your judgments and your chosen actions, not their consequences. It is about playing the game with integrity and focus, not about the final score on the board. This inner citadel, as the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius called it, is where your true freedom resides. No outside event, no person's criticism, no sudden change of fortune can force its way in here unless you grant it entry through your own assent. When a harsh comment comes your way, your first impression might be one of hurt or anger. That is automatic. Your prohairesis is what happens next. It is the space between that impression and your reaction. In that space, you have the choice. You can assent to the impression that you have been wronged and lash out, or you can question it. Is this comment true? What can I learn from it, if anything? Does this person's opinion define me? Your agency is exercised right there, in that moment of reasoned choice. This is why Stoic acceptance is the foundation of greater agency, not its enemy. By accepting the external event, the harsh comment itself, you are not endorsing it. You are simply acknowledging its existence as a fact outside your direct control. This clears the deck. It stops you from wasting your command energy trying to unsay the words or change the other person's mind. Now, with the reality clearly seen, all of your prohairesis, all of your faculty of choice, can be directed inward to the one thing that is always up to you. Your interpretation and your dignified response. You move from being a puppet jerked around by every external string to being the author of your own character. Your power was never in controlling the play. It was always in perfecting your performance. That quiet space between impression and reaction is where your power lies, yet we often never even reach it. We get stuck much earlier in a battle we cannot win. This is the hidden drain, the silent leak of your energy and focus. It is the resistance to what cannot be changed. Every time you rage against a reality that is already here, you are spending your finite resources on a ghost. Think of the last time you were stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. The frustration builds. You curse the other drivers, you pound the steering wheel, you replay the decision to take this route over and over. Your heart rate climbs, your muscles tense, your mind spins in frantic circles. But the traffic does not care. It is an external fact, a thing not up to you. All that emotional and physical energy you are pouring into your protest changes nothing about the cars ahead of you. It only changes you. It leaves you exhausted, agitated, and arriving at your destination mentally depleted before the meeting has even begun. You have taxed your own system, creating a kind of decision fatigue that makes it harder to think clearly, to listen well, or to present your best self. This is the direct cost of fighting the unchangeable. Your agency, your capacity for effective action in the one arena you can control, is diminished because you spent its fuel on a phantom war. The same mechanism plays out with a past mistake. Obsessing over it, replaying the scene with different choices, is another form of resistance. You are arguing with a moment that has already solidified into history. It is a closed door. The mental effort you expend trying to mentally rewrite that chapter is energy stolen from the page you are on right now. It leaves you with less focus for the present decision, less creativity for solving a current problem, less patience for the people around you. You are trying to steer a car while staring intently into the rearview mirror. And what about fretting over another person's opinion? When we tie our sense of worth or our peace of mind to whether someone approves of us, we hand them the keys to our inner citadel. Their opinion, like the traffic, is an external. We cannot control it, yet we can spend hours, days, imagining their judgments, crafting defenses in our minds, seeking validation. This mental rehearsal for a conversation that may never happen is a massive drain. It creates anxiety, saps confidence, and pulls our attention away from our own values and actions, the very things that are up to us. In each case, the pattern is the same. A fact presents itself, something outside our direct control. Instead of accepting its existence and turning our effort toward our response, we dig in our heels and push against it. This resistance is not strength. It is a friction that generates only heat and wear, never motion. It is the emotional equivalent of trying to stop a river with your bare hands. You will end up tired, cold, and the river will still flow. That exhaustion is not just a feeling. It is a real reduction in your effective power. A mind clouded by resentment over the past or anxiety over an opinion has less bandwidth for clear judgment. A body buzzing with the stress of fighting reality has less resilience for taking purposeful action. You arrive at the moments that matter with your batteries half drained by skirmishes you were never meant to fight. The path to greater agency, then, is not about mustering more energy to fight harder. It is about stopping the leaks. It is about recognizing the unwinnable battle for what it is, and in that moment of recognition, choosing to holster your weapons, turn around, and march your entire army toward the territory you can actually govern. Your own next move. The traffic does not listen, and the river keeps flowing. This is where acceptance becomes a profound act of conservation. Think of your mental and emotional energy as a reservoir of clear water. Every time you engage in that internal argument with a fact you cannot change, you are not just thinking. You are opening a tap and letting that precious resource pour straight onto the ground. You watch it drain away, feeling the growing emptiness, yet your hand remains on the valve, gripped by the belief that if you just protest loudly enough, the reality might reverse itself. Acceptance is the moment you finally, calmly turn the tap off. It is not a surrender to the situation. It is a surrender of the futile struggle against it. The situation remains. The water in your reservoir, however, stops disappearing. That is the cognitive shift. You move from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "Given that this is happening, what is the most constructive use of my energy now?" The first question is a bottomless pit. The second question directs a focused beam of light. The energy you conserve is not abstract. It is the very substance of your agency. It is the mental bandwidth previously consumed by repetitive worry, now available for creative problem solving. It is the focus once scattered by resentment, now gathered into a sharp point of attention for the task at hand. It is the emotional resilience that was being eroded by frustration, now preserved so you can face a genuine challenge with steadiness. This conserved energy becomes the fuel tank for purposeful action within your sphere. Imagine an athlete before a big race. If they spend the morning before the event fuming about the weather, anxious about a rival's comment, or replaying a poor practice from last week, they are burning glycogen, spiking their cortisol, and tightening their muscles with stress. They are depleting the exact resources they need to perform. The Stoic athlete accepts the weather as a condition of the race, sees the rival's comment as external noise, and views the past practice as data, not destiny. They conserve their physical and mental fuel. Then, when the starting pistol fires, that full reservoir of energy is translated directly into power, stride, and endurance. Their agency on the track is magnified because they did not waste it in the stands arguing with the conditions of the race. Your life is no different. The mental space cleared by accepting a difficult colleague, rather than daily resisting their existence, can be filled with strategizing how to communicate effectively. The emotional energy saved by accepting a financial setback, instead of nightly railing against misfortune, can be redirected into building a new budget or learning a new skill. Acceptance stops the leak so you can use the water to grow a garden. You are not agreeing with the drought. You are simply acknowledging it so you can wisely irrigate the plants you can actually save. This is how acceptance, which looks from the outside like stillness, creates immense internal motion. It is the quiet that comes not from having nothing to do, but from having stopped doing the one thing that was accomplishing nothing. In that quiet, you finally hear the sound of your own capacity, and you feel the full weight of the energy now yours to command. This conserved energy now becomes your strategic clarity. But to use it well, we must be absolutely clear on what we are not doing. Stoic acceptance is often mistaken for something far weaker, something it was never meant to be. Let us dismantle those misconceptions one by one, because if you confuse acceptance with these imposters, you will never unlock its true power. First, acceptance is not approval. To accept that a colleague spoke dismissively of your idea is not to agree that your idea was bad or to condone their behavior. It is simply to acknowledge the undeniable fact that the words were spoken. You are not signing a treaty with the event. You are reading the map of the territory so you know where you stand. Approval implies a moral endorsement, a sense that this is good or right. Acceptance carries no such judgment. It is a neutral, factual recognition. It is the difference between seeing a storm cloud on the horizon and deciding you like rain. You see the cloud, you note its presence, and you make a plan. Your values remain intact. Your sense of what is right remains firm. You are just no longer wasting energy denying the cloud exists. Second, acceptance is absolutely not complacency or apathy. This is the most dangerous misunderstanding. To accept a difficult situation is not to settle for it forever. It is the opposite. Complacency says, "This is fine, I will do nothing." Apathy says, "I do not care, nothing matters." Stoic acceptance says, "This is the current reality, and I care deeply enough about improving things that I will stop pretending it is otherwise." It is the foundation of effective strategy, not its replacement. Imagine a doctor treating a patient. The doctor does not approve of the illness. They are not apathetic about it. But they must first accept the diagnosis as the true starting point. Only from that clear, unflinching acknowledgement can they then formulate the correct treatment plan. To refuse to accept the diagnosis out of fear or wishful thinking would be the height of irresponsibility. Your life is no different. Accepting a financial strain is not being okay with it. It is the courageous act of opening the bank statement, looking at the numbers without flinching, so you can create a budget that actually works. The person who is apathetic does not open the statement at all. The person who is in denial tells themselves it is not that bad. The person practicing acceptance sees the truth clearly, and that clear sight is what empowers their first real step forward. Finally, and this is crucial, acceptance is not the absence of feeling. The Stoics were not advocating for a life of robotic numbness. They were masters of emotional clarity. Acceptance is not about suppressing grief when you experience a loss or stifling disappointment when a hope falls through. It is about allowing yourself to feel those human emotions fully, without letting them hijack your faculty of choice. It is the difference between saying, "I am sad," and saying, "Because I am sad, I cannot function." The first is an honest acknowledgement of an internal weather pattern. The second is a surrender of your command center to that weather. Acceptance creates the space for your feelings without being ruled by them. You feel the sting of the criticism, you acknowledge the hurt, and then from that calm center of Prohairesis, you choose how to respond. You might choose to feel the emotion deeply as part of your processing, but you do not let it decide your next move in a frenzy. Your agency resides in that choice. So what is it then, if not these things? Stoic acceptance is a clear-eyed acknowledgement of reality as it is. It is the disciplined, often difficult, act of setting aside the story you wish were true and looking directly at the story that is true. This is not a passive endpoint. It is the essential first step for any effective strategy, the solid ground from which all purposeful action springs. You cannot build a stable house on the foundation of a wish. You must build on the actual terrain with all its rocks and slopes. Acceptance is the act of surveying that real terrain. Once you see it, truly see it, with all its challenges and its possibilities, then, and only then, can you begin to build something remarkable upon it. The power was never in the fantasy of a flat, empty lot. The power is in your skilled adaptation to the land you actually have. All effective action springs from a single, undeniable source, a clear view of the ground beneath your feet. Before you can move with purpose, you must know where you are standing. This is the first and most fundamental step of agency, accurate perception. It sounds simple, almost too obvious to state. Yet it is the step we bypass most often, rushing instead into reactions based on a blurred and distorted picture of reality. Our judgment becomes clouded not by a lack of intelligence, but by a storm of emotional resistance. Denial, wishful thinking, fear, these are the passions that fog the lens. We look at a difficult situation and our first instinct is not to see it, but to edit it. We deny the severity of a problem, hoping it will vanish if we ignore it. We indulge in wishful thinking, painting over the facts with a brighter color we prefer. We filter events through the fear of what they might mean about us or our future. In doing so, we are not assessing the situation. We are arguing with it, and in that argument, we lose sight of the situation itself. We are trying to navigate a forest while insisting the trees are not there. Stoic acceptance, through its core discipline of assent, cuts directly through this fog. The discipline of assent is that moment of pause, that intentional space between receiving an impression and granting it your belief. It is the practice of interrogating your initial, often emotional, interpretation. When you hear a piece of criticism, the first impression might shout, "This is an attack, I am not good enough." The undisciplined mind immediately assents to that impression, and the emotional storm begins. The Stoic practice is to withhold that immediate assent, to step back and ask, is this impression an accurate representation of the facts, or is it colored by my pride, my insecurity, my history? You examine it, you strip away the narrative of threat and look at the raw data. The person said these specific words, that is the fact. Your story about what those words mean, that is your addition. This disciplined looking creates something invaluable, a stable platform for choice. When your perception is clouded by denial, your choices are built on sand. You might choose to do nothing about a financial leak because you deny its existence, only to find the foundation crumbling later. When your perception is distorted by wishful thinking, your choices become gambles. You might invest in a plan based on how you want things to be, not how they are, setting yourself up for a harsh confrontation with reality. Accurate perception, forged through the acceptance of facts as they are, provides a solid foundation. It is like a surgeon switching on a bright, cool light in the operating room. The light does not approve of the illness. It does not wish the anatomy were different. It simply illuminates the true landscape with stark clarity. Only under that light can the surgeon's hands move with precise agency, knowing exactly where to cut and where to suture. Your life demands the same clarity. To perceive your workload accurately without the distortion of overwhelm or procrastination allows you to prioritize effectively. To perceive a relationship difficulty clearly without the filter of blame or self-pity allows you to communicate with intention. The stable platform is not a state of emotional flatness. It is a state of cognitive integrity where what you believe aligns closely with what is actually so. From that platform, your choices cease to be desperate reactions. They become strategic responses. You are no longer swinging at shadows in the fog. You are moving with direction in the clear air. Your agency begins not with a grandiose act of will, but with this humble, courageous act of seeing. That stable platform of clear sight is where the real work begins. It is not a place to rest, but a place to pivot. The power of Stoic acceptance reveals itself in a precise, three-step sequence, a mental reorientation that transforms a passive observation into an active launchpad. First, you discern. You look at the situation, the event, the feeling, and you apply the dichotomy of control like a litmus test. You ask the clarifying question, what here is not up to me? Is it the rain that cancelled your outdoor event? That is not up to you. Is it the critical comment from a stranger online? That is not up to you. Is it the fact that you made a mistake yesterday? That past action, while yours, is now a fixed event, also not up to you to change. This step is not about blame or fault. It is a clean, factual separation, like sorting tools into two boxes. One box holds the uncontrollable conditions of the world. The other holds your own capacities. The moment you place something firmly in the first box, a subtle but profound shift occurs. You stop pulling on a rope that is anchored to a mountain. Second, you accept that external fact as a given. This is not a sigh of resignation. It is a deliberate mental nod. You are marking it on your internal map as a feature of the terrain, not a mistake in the landscape. The rain is now a data point. The comment is now a piece of information. The past mistake is now a fixed coordinate. By accepting it as a simple fact, you drain it of its emotional leverage. It loses its power to hook you into a cycle of protest or regret. You are not agreeing with the rain. You are simply ceasing to argue with the sky. This acceptance establishes a new, honest starting line. You are no longer at the starting line of your wish, where the sun is shining and everyone is polite. You are at the starting line of reality, where it is wet and someone was unkind. This is the only line from which a real race can be run. Third, and this is where agency ignites, you pivot. You turn your entire attention, your effort, and your creative energy toward the second box. You ask the pivotal question, given this new starting line, what is up to me now? Your focus swings 180 degrees from the external fact you cannot change to your internal and immediate sphere of influence. the rain is not up to you. What is up to you is moving the gathering indoors, or calling attendees with a new plan, or choosing to see the cozy indoor alternative as a chance for a different kind of connection. The critical comment is not up to you. What is up to you is whether you engage with it, what you learn from it, if anything, and how you protect your own peace of mind. The past mistake is not up to you to undo. What is up to you is the apology you offer today, the lesson you integrate, and the different choice you make this very hour. This pivot is the engine. It is the conversion of conserved energy into directed motion. Acceptance did not reduce your options. It clarified them by removing the illusory option of changing the unchangeable. Now all your power is concentrated on the genuine options that remain. You move from being a spectator, frustrated by the rules of the game, to being a player, expertly adapting your strategy to the actual field of play. This three-step sequence, discern, accept, pivot, is not a one-time event. It is a practiced reflex. It is the mental muscle memory of agency. Each time you run this sequence, you reinforce a fundamental truth. Your control was never over the events of life, but over your relationship to them. And in that relationship, you are not a passive recipient. You are the author, constantly choosing how the story turns by deciding where to place your next purposeful word. This pivot from acceptance to action finds perfect form in an ancient image, the Stoic archer. Seneca, the Roman philosopher, used this analogy to crystallize the entire practice. Picture an archer on a field. Their goal is to hit the target. Their agency, their excellence, lies entirely in the actions that are up to them. They must select the right arrow. They must stand with proper posture, plant their feet firmly on the earth. They must nock the arrow, draw the bowstring back with focused strength, aim with a steady eye, and release with a smooth, controlled motion. Every ounce of their skill, their training, and their intention is poured into this sequence. This is their sphere of control. They have done everything within human power to send that arrow true. And then, the moment the arrow leaves the bow, it enters a different realm. A sudden gust of wind may push it off course. The target itself, if it is a living creature, might startle and move. Another person could step into the path. These factors are not up to the archer. They are external conditions, the things not up to us. Now consider two archers. The first one, after a perfect release, sees a wind gust deflect their arrow. They erupt in frustration. They curse the weather, blame the gods, stomp their feet, and let their anger shake their focus for the next shot. They are resisting the reality of the wind, which they cannot control, and in doing so, they are damaging the one thing they can control, their readiness for the next attempt. Their agency diminishes with each complaint. The second archer, the Stoic archer, practices acceptance. They see the wind gust, they watch the arrow veer. They acknowledge this fact without internal protest. They do not approve of the wind. They are not apathetic about missing. They simply accept that the wind is a part of the environment today. This acceptance is not passive. It is what allows them to immediately turn their full attention back to their sphere. They feel the ground under their feet once more. They check their posture. They select another arrow. Their mind is clear, their focus undiminished by rage, because they did not spend their mental energy arguing with a force of nature. Their acceptance of the uncontrollable wind safeguarded their ability to control their next action with excellence. The beauty of this analogy is its clarity. The archer's job was never to control the wind. Their job was to master the art of archery. By accepting the wind, they are freed to be a better archer. They can even learn from it, adjusting their aim for the next shot based on the wind's pattern. Their power was never in the flight of a single arrow, but in the consistent quality of their process, shot after shot, regardless of conditions. Your life is an endless field, and you are the archer. Your target might be a career goal, a peaceful home, a personal project, or a meaningful relationship. Your sphere of control is your preparation, your effort, your integrity, your communication, your daily practice. You draw your bow with skill through your actions. The winds, however, will always blow. The market may shift. Other people may react unexpectedly. Circumstances outside your planning will arise to tie your sense of success or your sense of self to whether every arrow strikes the bull's eye is to hand your agency over to the weather. The Stoic path asks you to redefine success. Success is not the hit. Success is the excellence of your form. It is knowing you did everything up to you with care, with virtue, and with full presence. When you can release your arrow, accept the wind, and calmly reach for the next one, you have moved from seeking control over outcomes to wielding profound authority over your own character. That is an agency no gust of wind can ever take from you. The excellence of your form matters more than any single shot. Let us bring this principle down to the ground of a modern life, where the targets are promotions and the wins are the decisions of others. Imagine a dedicated professional, someone who has poured their energy into their role for years. They see a promotion open up, a position they have been working toward. They prepare meticulously, they interview, they feel a quiet confidence. Then the email arrives. They were not chosen. The role went to someone else. In this moment, a fork in the road appears, and the path taken defines their agency for months to come. The non-Stoic reaction is a familiar human spiral. It begins with a shock of bitterness, a sharp sense of unfairness. The mind immediately starts constructing a case. It must have been office politics. The boss never liked me. The other person must have had an inside track. This narrative of blame takes root. Then comes rumination, the mental replaying of every interaction, every piece of feedback, searching for clues to confirm the story of injustice. The person might withdraw, their enthusiasm for their current work draining away. They carry a quiet resentment into meetings. Their collaboration becomes guarded. Their performance may subtly decline. This is the agency-reducing effect in clear view. Where is their energy going? It is funneled entirely into the past, into a decision they cannot reverse, and into the imagined motivations of others which they cannot control. Their focus, their creativity, their capacity for positive action in their own career is being siphoned off by this internal protest. They are, in essence, boycotting their own present and future because of an outcome they did not want. They are letting the missed shot paralyze their entire form. The Stoic path begins with a difficult, deliberate breath. It starts by applying the dichotomy of control to the raw news. The company's decision, the manager's choice, the selection of another candidate, these are external facts. They belong squarely in the category of things not up to me. The Stoic practice is to accept this not as a judgment of your worth, but as a simple, current reality of the workplace landscape. This acceptance is the act of reading the email and saying, "This is the result." It does not mean you like it. It does not mean you agree with it. It means you stop arguing with the content of the message. You acknowledge the disappointment you feel. You allow that emotion its space, but you refuse to let it build a permanent home in your mind. This acceptance is the equivalent of the archer watching the wind gust. It happened. Now, with the external fact acknowledged, you pivot your gaze with intention. You turn your entire attention to the second box, the sphere of what is up to you. Your agency ignites here in the questions that follow. Given this result, what can I control? You can control requesting specific, constructive feedback from the decision maker, not to debate but to learn. You can control an honest assessment of your own skills, identifying areas for development that would make you a stronger candidate next time. You can control your network, reaching out to build new connections within or outside the organization. You can control the quality of your work on your current projects, maintaining your professional integrity regardless of disappointment. You can even control the broader search, exploring if this closed door is a signal to seek an opportunity elsewhere where your growth might be better aligned. Each of these actions is a direct exercise of power. They are you knocking a new arrow, adjusting your stance, drawing the bow with focus. The missed promotion is the wind. Your response is your archery. The person who follows this path does not become a passive bystander in their career. They become an active strategist. The energy that would have been spent on bitterness is now invested in a course on leadership. The time spent ruminating on office politics is now used to update a portfolio or have a coffee with a colleague in another department. They have accepted the reality of the marketplace, which includes competition and subjective decisions, and in doing so, they have freed themselves to operate more skillfully within it. Their sense of agency does not come from the title they hold today. It comes from the undeniable knowledge that they are steering their own development. They are not waiting for a promotion to grant them value. They are building value through their actions, and that building is something no one can ever pass over. The target remains, but their confidence now rests in the strength of their draw, not the fickleness of the wind. The strength of your draw is tested most intimately not on a career field, but in the quiet tensions of home. A disagreement with a family member can feel like a special kind of wind, one that seems personal, designed to knock your arrow astray. Perhaps it is a recurring argument about lifestyle choices, a clash of political views at the dinner table, or the simmering hurt from an old, unresolved grievance. In these moments, our instinct for agency often takes a misguided turn. We believe that to have control, to fix the situation, we must change the other person's mind. We marshal our facts, we refine our arguments, we replay our persuasive points, hoping to finally make them see the light. We are trying to control something that sits firmly on the wrong side of the dichotomy of control, another person's internal world, their thoughts, their beliefs, their feelings. This effort is the ultimate energy leak. It is like trying to command the tide not to come in by shouting at the ocean. You may shout until you are hoarse, but the water will still rise according to its own rhythm. The frustration you feel is not just about the disagreement, it is the exhaustion of that futile campaign. Your sense of powerlessness grows because you are investing your agency in a territory where you have no sovereignty. Your peace becomes contingent on their concession, a prize they hold and refuse to give. This is how relational conflicts drain us, not by the disagreement itself, but by our resistance to the simple, difficult fact that we cannot control another human being. Stoic acceptance in this context is a radical act of respect for them and for yourself. It means accepting their right to their own perspective, even and especially when you find it wrong or hurtful. This does not mean you agree with them. It does not mean you condone unkindness. It means you acknowledge the reality that their mind is their own. You stop the internal argument with the version of them you wish existed, and you begin to engage with the person who is actually before you. This acceptance is the moment you stop pulling on your end of the mental rope. The tension you felt was not just theirs, it was your half of the tug of war. When you drop your end, the dynamic changes entirely. The energy you were using to pull is suddenly returned to you. Now, freed from the impossible task of managing their interiority, your agency pivots to your own sphere, which is vast and full of genuine power. You can control your own communication. Instead of crafting arguments to win, you can choose words intended for understanding, or choose silence when words will only fuel the fire. You can control your boundaries. You can decide what topics are off limits for the sake of peace, or how much time you spend in a heated environment. Most importantly, you can control your emotional responses. You can practice feeling the sting of their words without letting that sting dictate your next sentence. You can feel anger without becoming wrathful. You can feel disappointment without becoming cold. This is where your true authority resides, in the governance of your own inner citadel amidst the siege of discord. Imagine a conversation where a relative makes a pointed comment about your life choices. The old pattern would be to react defensively, to list your reasons, to try to force them to approve. The Stoic shift begins internally. You discern. Their opinion, their approval is not up to you. You accept that this is their perspective, a fact as present as the chair they are sitting on. This acceptance is not a defeat, it is a strategic clarity. Then you pivot. What is up to me? Your response is up to you. You might choose a simple, unarguable acknowledgement. I hear that you see it differently. You might ask a curious question to understand their concern better, not to rebut it but to genuinely listen. Or you might calmly state your own boundary. I am not going to discuss this further, but I would love to talk about something else. In each case, you are not controlling the conversation. You are steering your own ship within it. The conflict may not vanish, but your entanglement in it does. You are no longer a prisoner of their reaction, because you are no longer demanding a specific one. Your agency is no longer tied to the outcome of changing them, but is expressed in the dignity and intention of your own conduct. This transforms the relationship from a battlefield you are trying to win into a shared space where you are responsible only for your own footprint. You may find that when you stop trying to control them, you create the only condition in which they might ever actually change, but that is a wind you cannot aim for. Your target is your own integrity, and from the solid ground of that acceptance, you can draw your bow with a steady hand, aiming not at their heart, but at the quiet bullseye of your own unwavering character. Your own unwavering character is the ultimate target, but what if the wind itself became part of your aim? This is the frontier beyond Stoic acceptance, a territory mapped by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche with a simple, potent Latin phrase, Amor Fati. The love of fate, this idea, deeply inspired by the Stoic foundation, asks a startling question. What if you moved beyond merely accepting what happens to seeing every single event, especially the obstacles and the setbacks, as not just necessary, but as beneficial, even essential for your own development? This is not a passive shrug. It is an active, passionate embrace. It transforms agency from a practice of managing reality to a creative partnership with it. Where acceptance says, I will not fight this wind, Amor Fati says, I need this wind to teach me how to sail. It turns every impediment from a problem to be solved into fuel for the journey and training for the soul. Consider the difference in feeling. Acceptance can sometimes carry a tone of gritted teeth, a dignified bearing of a burden. Amor Fati seeks to find the gift inside the burden. The Stoic archer accepts the gust of wind. The philosopher who loves fate looks at that same gust and thinks, this teaches me to read the air, to strengthen my stance, to become an archer who can thrive in any weather. The obstacle is no longer an interruption of my path. It is revealed as the very texture of the path itself. This shift is alchemical. It changes your relationship with difficulty at the deepest level. When you merely accept a career setback, you conserve energy to strategize anew. When you learn to love that fate, you begin to interrogate it for its hidden curriculum. What did this closed door reveal about my true desires? What weakness in my approach did it expose that I can now fortify? How did this disappointment strengthen my resilience for the next bigger challenge? The setback is metabolized not as a failure, but as a nutrient for growth. Your agency expands because you are no longer just reacting to events. You are actively mining them for meaning and strength. You become a sculptor who sees the rough, resistant stone not as a barrier to a beautiful statue, but as the only possible source of it. The hammer and chisel of your will are applied not against the stone, but in creative dialogue with it. Every hard edge, every unexpected flaw in the material becomes a guide for the emerging form. This is how Amor Fati radicalizes your sense of control. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? A question that assumes you are a victim of circumstance. You start asking, what is this happening for me? A question that assumes you are a student in a school designed for your ultimate development. The former question looks for blame. The latter looks for purpose, and purpose is the most powerful fuel for action there is. Imagine two people experiencing the same significant hardship, a serious illness, a major financial loss, a profound personal betrayal. The first, practicing acceptance, manages not to be destroyed by it. They bear it with grace, focus on what they can control, and rebuild. This is immense strength. The second, who finds a way toward Amor Fati, undergoes a different transformation. They might come to see the illness as a brutal teacher that reordered their priorities toward what truly matters. They might view the financial loss as the forceful push that required them to build a more authentic, self-reliant livelihood. They might understand the betrayal as the painful event that finally taught them the boundaries of their own self-respect. In each case, the event is not loved for its pain, but for the undeniable, forged-in-fire strength and clarity it produced. The agency here is monumental. It means that nothing, absolutely nothing that life can bring, can ultimately defeat you because you have learned to convert all of it, even the bitterest ingredients, into the substance of your own evolution. You are not at the mercy of fate. You are in a dynamic, lifelong dance with it where every step, even the missteps, are essential to the beauty of the movement. This does not mean pretending suffering is pleasant. It means trusting the process of your own becoming so deeply that you would not edit a single line from the story for fear of weakening the character you are meant to be. That is the ultimate authorship. That is agency forged in the love of what is. This radical embrace of fate may seem like a distant ideal, yet its practical power is unlocked through a specific, daily Stoic exercise. A common and persistent criticism of acceptance is that it sounds like a recipe for passivity, for simply letting life happen to you without a fight. If you accept everything, the argument goes, why would you ever prepare, plan, or strive to improve your circumstances? This misunderstanding misses the crucial distinction between accepting reality and abandoning responsibility for your response to it. The Stoics had a powerful answer to this critique, a mental discipline designed not to induce fear but to forge unshakable readiness. They called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Far from being a morbid exercise in pessimism, this practice is the ultimate form of proactive agency. It is the systematic, calm acceptance of potential difficulties before they ever arrive. Think of it as a fire drill for the mind. We conduct fire drills not because we want the building to burn down, but because we accept the reality that fires can happen. The drill is an act of acceptance that leads directly to prepared, effective action. By mentally walking through the scenario in advance, we reduce the panic, the shock, and the confusion if the alarm ever sounds. We know where the exits are. We have rehearsed our movements. This is precisely what Premeditatio Malorum accomplishes. It is not about dwelling on negative outcomes with anxiety. It is about defanging them through deliberate, rational examination. The practice involves setting aside a few quiet moments to consider what challenges the day, the week, or a specific endeavor might hold. A Stoic might ask themselves, what if my presentation is met with silence? What if the traffic makes me late for my important meeting? What if the project I have invested in does not succeed? The key is to visualize these possibilities not with dread, but with a calm, almost clinical detachment. You are not wishing for them to happen. You are simply acknowledging that they are possible events in a world you do not fully control. This mental rehearsal does two transformative things. First, it dramatically reduces the emotional shock if a difficulty does materialize. When you have already accepted a possibility as part of the landscape of life, its arrival feels less like a personal catastrophe and more like a scenario you have already contemplated. The sting of surprise is removed. You are not blindsided. Because you have already looked at this potential future with clear eyes, you greet its reality not with a cry of "why me," but with a nod of recognition. There it is, I have seen this in my mind's eye. This immediate emotional cushion is a profound source of resilience. It allows you to move from shock to solution far more quickly, conserving all that energy we discussed for the pivot into action. Second, and this is where agency is powerfully amplified, this pre-acceptance creates the mental space for clear, deliberate contingency planning. When you imagine a setback in a state of calm, your reasoning faculty is fully online. You can think strategically. If the presentation is met with silence, my prepared contingency is to pause, ask a specific question to engage the audience, or move to my next key point with confidence. If the traffic is terrible, I will call ahead, listen to an audiobook to use the time well, and apologize calmly upon arrival. By accepting the possibility in advance, you are freed to craft a response. You are not planning from a place of fear, but from a place of prudent foresight. You are the general who has studied the map, considered the enemy's possible moves, and has a plan for each. This is the opposite of inaction. It is action taken in the most intelligent order, first in the mind, so it can be executed with grace in the world. Your agency is not diminished by imagining what could go wrong. It is enhanced because you have already decided how you will stand firm if it does. You are no longer a passive passenger hoping for smooth seas. You are the captain who has checked the weather charts, secured the rigging, and knows exactly how to steer the ship when the first dark clouds appear on the horizon. That captain checking the weather charts knows a crucial secret, one that the frantic passenger does not. The passenger's white-knuckled grip on the armrest, their desperate scanning of the horizon for any sign of a wave, feels like an attempt at control. But it is not agency, it is anxiety in disguise. This is the hidden trap, the illusion that masquerades as power. We often confuse the compulsive need to manage, predict, and dominate external circumstances with being in charge of our lives. We believe that if we just worry enough, plan for every contingency, or bend others to our will, we are exercising our agency. In truth, we are building a fortress on sand, a fragile sense of power that is perpetually at the mercy of the next tide. This compulsive control is not strength. It is a reaction to fear, a frantic effort to quiet the anxiety of an uncertain world by pretending we can command it. Your mind spins with endless what-if scenarios. You micromanage the people around you. You become rigid and inflexible when plans change. Each of these actions feels active. It feels like doing something, so we mistake it for taking control. But it is a mirage. True agency is calm, directed, and internal. The illusion of external control is frantic, scattered, and exhausting. It ties your sense of self-worth and peace to outcomes you can never guarantee. When the promotion does not come through, when the person does not change, when the market shifts, that carefully constructed illusion shatters against the rocks of reality. And each shattering feels like a personal failure, a theft of your power, plunging you deeper into anxiety and the need to tighten your grip even further. It is a cycle that drains you because you are investing your life's energy in a kingdom you do not and cannot rule. Stoic acceptance is the courageous act of walking to the edge of that illusory kingdom and looking out at the vast, unpredictable terrain beyond. It is the moment you admit you are not the monarch of the world. This admission could feel like defeat, but it is actually the most liberating discovery you can make. It dismantles the illusion brick by exhausting brick. By clearly discerning what is not up to you, you stop pouring your identity into those crumbling walls. You are no longer the ruler of the weather or the traffic or other people's choices. You are relieved of that impossible burden. This grounding is not a reduction of your sphere of influence, it is a clarification of it. Your true kingdom, your unassailable realm of agency, is suddenly revealed. It is the internal landscape of your own mind, your values, your judgments, and your chosen actions. This realm cannot be invaded by a sudden storm. It cannot be voted out of power by a committee. No economic downturn can bankrupt it. No criticism can lay siege to its walls unless you open the gate yourself. When you ground your agency here, in the only place it was ever real, you exchange a fragile, anxiety-driven illusion for a quiet, unshakable sovereignty. The compulsive need to control the meeting's outcome transforms into a focused commitment to prepare your notes thoroughly and speak with clarity. The exhausting effort to make a loved one happy shifts into the manageable power of offering your presence and kindness without demanding a specific reaction. The frantic worry about future headlines turns into the decisive action of limiting your news intake and volunteering in your local community. In each case, the energy is the same, but its direction has changed. It is no longer beating against an immovable outer wall. It is now flowing into the inner gardens you can actually tend. Your sense of power stops being something the world gives you or takes away. It becomes a quality you cultivate from within, a deep knowing that no matter what happens out there, in here, you still have the final say on who you choose to be. This unshakable sovereignty has a name in the Stoic tradition, the inner citadel. It is not a physical place, but a state of mind so fortified by the practice of acceptance that it becomes your permanent home. Over time, as you consistently discern what is not yours to command and pivot your energy inward, you are not just making a choice, you are performing an act of mental architecture. You are building walls not to keep the world out, but to define a sacred space within. The bricks of this citadel are your reasoned judgments. The mortar is your practiced values. And the foundation, deep and unyielding, is your acceptance of a simple truth. Your well-being cannot be held hostage by events outside the gates. Consider what we typically use as the measure of our worth. We look to our job title, our social media likes, the approval of a parent, the balance in our bank account, the success of our relationships. These are all externals, prizes that fortune can grant or take away on a whim. When we chain our sense of self to these moving targets, we make ourselves exquisitely vulnerable. A bad performance review does not just reflect on our work, it feels like an indictment of our character. A social rejection is not just a momentary awkwardness, it echoes as proof we are unlovable. This is life on a roller coaster you did not build and cannot steer, a nauseating cycle of elation and despair dictated by the whims of the world. The practice of acceptance is the slow, deliberate process of untying those chains. Each time you face a setback and consciously choose to see it as an external event, not a verdict on your soul, you loosen one knot. Each time you receive a compliment and enjoy it without letting it become the new baseline for your happiness, you loosen another. You are not becoming indifferent to the world. You are becoming selective about what you allow to define you. The long-term effect is a profound liberation. When your self-worth is no longer invested in the stock market of external validation, you become curiously immune to its crashes. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as Shakespeare called them, still fly. They still sting when they hit, but they cannot penetrate the inner courtyard. A critical comment might land at the gate, but you now have the space to examine it, to see if it carries any useful grain of truth, and to discard the rest as mere noise. A financial loss might shake the ground, but it cannot collapse the structure where you live. This is the ultimate strength, not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of an unassailable peace from which to meet it. From this fortified place, your capacity for reasoned action does not just return, it becomes your default state. Your mind is no longer clouded by the panic of a threatened identity. You are not reacting from a place of wounded pride or desperate fear. You are responding from a center of calm assessment. The problem before you is just that, a problem to be solved, not an existential threat. This clarity is what makes consistent, effective action possible. A leader whose confidence is built on their inner citadel can make tough, unpopular decisions without being derailed by criticism. An artist whose sense of purpose is internal can create boldly, regardless of trends or reviews. A parent grounded in their own values can guide with steady love, even amidst the chaos of growing up. They are not perfect, they feel the winds of fortune, but they are not leaning on a flimsy fence for support, they are standing in a stronghold. The world outside the walls will always be turbulent, full of events you cannot control. The gift of this practice is the quiet realization that you were never meant to control it. You were meant to cultivate the ground within, to build a home so steadfast that no storm, no setback, no turn of luck can ever make you homeless again. Your agency finds its deepest expression not in conquering the outer world, but in completing the inner one. That unassailable home within has a specific name in the Stoic tradition, a word often misunderstood, apatheia. This is not the modern emptiness of apathy. It is not a cold, emotionless state. It is something far more powerful, a state of inner tranquility achieved through freedom from the destructive passions. The Stoics saw passions like paralyzing fear, blinding rage, or consuming grief not as natural emotions, but as judgments that had run wild. They were the storms that could flood the inner citadel, clouding the lens of reason and making clear judgment impossible. Apatheia is the calm harbor after the storm has been navigated, the clear sky that allows you to see the horizon again. It is the quiet mind from which truly good decisions can be made. And the daily practice that cultivates this freedom is acceptance. Every time you practice acceptance, you are not just acknowledging an external fact, you are training your mind to remain undisturbed by it. You are strengthening the walls against the siege of those hijacking emotions. Think of a moment of sudden, sharp fear. Perhaps you receive an alarming but vague message about a family member's health. The first impression, the raw data, is the message. The passion, the destructive storm, is the immediate cascade of catastrophic thinking, the heart-pounding anxiety that imagines the worst possible outcomes before any facts are known. This passion hijacks your rational faculty. You cannot think straight, you cannot plan, you are a prisoner of the imagined future. Stoic acceptance intervenes at the point of the first impression. It is the discipline of looking at the message and saying, "This is the information I have right now. I do not yet know the full situation." This acceptance of the current, limited reality creates a crucial buffer. It holds back the tidal wave of fear just long enough for your reason to engage. From that small pocket of calm, you can then ask the rational questions. What are the next practical steps I can take? Who can I call for accurate information? What is actually within my control at this very moment? The acceptance of the unknown did not create the calm, but it created the space for calm to exist. It prevented the passion from flooding the engine room of your mind. This is how acceptance builds equanimity, peace by practiced peace. It is not about never feeling a flicker of fear or a pang of grief. It is about developing the resilience so those feelings do not become the masters of your ship. Each time you accept a traffic jam as a condition of the commute, you weaken the grip of frustration. Each time you accept a critical comment as someone else's perspective, you loosen the hold of defensive anger. Each time you accept a past mistake as a fixed point in your history, you drain the power of corrosive regret. You are not eliminating emotion, you are clearing the emotional clutter that blocks the view of your own reasoned choice. The result is that clear mental space, the apatheia, where your best self can operate. In that space, you are not reacting from a place of panic or pride or pain. You are responding from a place of principle and perspective. A leader facing a corporate crisis from this space does not make decisions based on stock price panic, but on long-term strategy. A parent navigating a child's struggle from this space does not react from their own embarrassment, but from a place of patient guidance. The quality of the action is transformed because the source of the action is serene. Your agency reaches its peak not when you are most forceful, but when you are most clear, and that clarity is the direct product of a mind that has, through the steady practice of acceptance, learned to remain its own master, no matter what winds howl outside the walls. This clear mental space is where our actions are finally born as our own. There is a profound difference between moving through the world and being moved by it, a distinction the Stoics captured in the idea of voluntary action. When you act from a place of resentment because you are furious at a situation you cannot change, your action is not fully voluntary. It is a reaction, a spasm of the will, compelled by the external event that triggered your anger. You are not choosing the action so much as you are being pushed into it by the force of your own resistance. The same is true for actions driven by frantic anxiety or desperate people-pleasing. These are involuntary in the Stoic sense because they are not flowing from your reasoned choice, but from a turbulent emotional current you have not yet mastered. Your agency in these moments is an illusion, a puppet show where your strings are being pulled by passions you have mistaken for your own will. Acceptance changes the entire mechanism. When you have first accepted the reality of a difficult situation, you create a buffer of calm between the event and your response. In that buffer, you regain your footing. You are no longer being shoved by the wave, you are standing in the water, assessing the current. From that place of stability, any action you then take is voluntary. It is chosen, it is selected from a menu of possibilities by your faculty of reason, aligned with your deeper principles, not your immediate impulses. This is the ultimate alignment of power. Think of two employees facing an unfair workload. The first, burning with resentment, reluctantly completes the tasks, but their work is sloppy, their attitude poisonous, and they complain to anyone who will listen. Their action, though they are physically doing the work, is involuntary. It is coerced by their own unchecked bitterness. The second employee practices acceptance. They acknowledge the unfair distribution as a current fact of their workplace. This clear-eyed acknowledgement allows them to move past the emotional protest. Now, from a place of calm, they can make a voluntary choice. They might choose to complete the work with care, protecting their professional standards. They might choose to schedule a respectful conversation with their manager about sustainable workloads. They might even choose to update their resume and explore new opportunities. Each of these actions is voluntary, stemming from their own values and long-term vision, not from the momentary heat of resentment. The action itself might look similar on the surface, but its source is worlds apart. One is a reaction that further enslaves you to the circumstance. The other is a response that asserts your sovereignty over it. Your principles become the compass, not the storm. This is how acceptance, which seems to be about yielding to reality, actually increases your capacity for voluntary and therefore truly powerful action. You stop being a billiard ball knocked in one direction by the last impact. You become the player considering the layout of the table and choosing the shot that best expresses your skill. The quality of your life is not determined by the impacts you endure, but by the artistry of the shots you voluntarily choose to take. That artistry of the voluntary shot requires a special kind of intention, one that holds ambition and humility in the same hand. The Stoics formalized this balance with a simple, profound mental tool they called the reserve clause. This is the practice of adding a silent but powerful phrase to every goal, every plan, every endeavor you undertake. You say to yourself, "I will do my best to achieve this, fate permitting," or "I will strive for this outcome if nothing prevents me." This is not a disclaimer of half-hearted effort. It is the ultimate expression of mature agency, a complete commitment to your own action paired with a clear-eyed acceptance of the world's unpredictable nature. The clause has two distinct parts and both are essential. The first part, "I will do my best," is where you marshal your entire will. This is the sphere of what is up to you. You commit your focus, your energy, your skill, your creativity. You leave nothing on the table. You draw the bow with every ounce of strength and precision you possess. The second part, fate permitting, is the graceful acknowledgement of the archer's wind. It recognizes that the outcome, the final flight of the arrow, depends on factors beyond your command. The target might move, the string might snap, a sudden distraction might occur. By including this clause in your intention from the very beginning, you are not weakening your resolve. You are strengthening your entire psychological position. You are accepting the fundamental truth of the dichotomy of control before you even begin, which paradoxically frees you to act with greater wholeheartedness. Imagine an athlete training for the Olympics. Their reserve clause sounds like this: I will train with absolute discipline, sacrifice, and focus for the next 4 years to make the team and compete for a medal, fate permitting. The fate permitting encompasses potential injury, the emergence of a more talented competitor, an unexpected illness, or even a global event that cancels the games. By holding this clause in mind, the athlete does not train any less hard. In fact, they might train smarter, incorporating injury prevention and mental resilience precisely because they accept that fate has a say. Their agency is laser-focused on the process, the daily grind, the things they can control. The outcome is hoped for, worked toward, but not clung to as the sole measure of their worth or effort. The protective power of this practice is immense. Without the reserve clause, our hopes are brittle. We tie our entire sense of success and self-esteem to a specific result. When fate intervenes, as it often does, and the result does not materialize, we are shattered. We feel that all our effort was wasted, that we are failures. This is the despair that the reserve clause is designed to prevent. With the clause, you have already made peace with the possibility of an external obstacle. If you give a presentation with everything you have and it is not well received, the disappointment is real, but it is not catastrophic. You can reflect and say, I did my part with excellence. The reception was not up to me. This is not making excuses. It is an accurate assessment that preserves your energy for learning and for the next attempt. Your agency remains intact because it was invested in the effort, not mortgaged to the outcome. You are like a sailor who plots the best possible course, maintains the ship perfectly, but understands the sea holds the final authority. This mindset transforms how you engage with every ambition, from the mundane to the life-changing. Applying for a job, I will prepare thoroughly and interview with confidence, fate permitting. This means you accept that the decision rests with the hiring committee, a factor outside you. It liberates you to be more authentic and less desperate in the interview. Working on a creative project, I will write this book with passion and discipline, fate permitting. This acknowledges that the market's response or a publisher's interest is not yours to command. It allows you to focus on the purity of the creative act itself. Even in personal relationships, I will communicate with honesty and kindness, fate permitting. This accepts that the other person's reaction is their own. It enables you to act from integrity rather than from a need to control their response. In each case, the reserve clause is the mental architecture of the inner citadel applied to action. It builds a buffer between your virtuous effort and the world's unpredictable results. Your commitment is total, but your peace is not contingent. You strive not as a beggar hoping for a reward, but as a sovereign exercising your right to excellent action, come what may. This is the serene power of an agency that is ambitious yet unbreakable, because it is rooted not in winning, but in the dignity of the attempt itself. The dignity of the attempt itself is tested most severely when fate permits not a setback, but a profound and personal hardship. This is the hardest case for our argument, the moment when the idea of agency can feel like a cruel joke. When facing a deep personal loss, a difficult health challenge, or any form of suffering that reshapes the landscape of a life, the very notion of control seems to vanish entirely. What could acceptance possibly offer here, and how could it not be a reduction of the human spirit to mere endurance? This is where the Stoic framework reveals its deepest strength, not as a denial of pain, but as a map for navigating it with a sovereignty that suffering cannot touch. The agency does not disappear, it transforms. It shifts from what you can do in the world to how you choose to be within your experience. In the midst of grief, the things not up to you are vast and undeniable. The event of the loss itself, the absence now present, the cascade of practical and emotional changes, these are the winds of a hurricane. To pretend you can control these facts is to invite a deeper kind of devastation. Stoic acceptance here is not about not feeling the sorrow. It is the courageous, heart-wrenching act of saying, "This has happened." It is the opposite of denial. It is looking directly at the new, unwanted reality and acknowledging its existence. This initial acceptance is agonizing, but it is the first step out of the paralyzing shock of protest. It grounds you in what is true, however painful, so you are not also exhausting yourself by fighting a fact that cannot be altered. Your energy, what little you have, is conserved. From that ground of clear, though painful, sight, your agency pivots to the sphere that remains yours, which is still vast and meaningful. You cannot control the loss, but you can control how you bear it. This is not about putting on a brave face for others. It is about the private choices of character. Will you allow the grief to make you bitter and closed, or will you let it, in time, make you more compassionate and present for others who suffer? The agency is in the daily decision to get out of bed, to drink a glass of water, to take one small step that honors the memory of what was lost. It is in choosing, moment by moment, to lean into the support offered by others, or to seek out a community that understands. The power lies in assigning meaning to the suffering. This is not about finding a silver lining or pretending the loss was good. It is about asking, in my life now, what can this pain teach me about what I truly value? How can I live in a way that honors what I have lost? This process of meaning-making is an intensely active, creative act of the inner citadel. It is how you begin to rebuild the walls around a new, altered landscape. Consider someone navigating a serious, long-term health challenge. The diagnosis and its physical realities are not up to them. The agency-reducing path is a constant internal war against the body's new condition, a resentment that depletes the very energy needed for healing. The Stoic path begins with the difficult acceptance of the diagnosis as the current map of the territory. This acceptance is not surrender to the illness. It is surrender of the futile fight against the fact of it. From that clear starting point, agency floods into the spaces that are up to them. It is in how they choose to engage with their treatment, becoming an informed and active partner with their care providers. It is in the attitude they bring to each day, choosing moments of gratitude or gentle humor where they can be found. It is in how they use their experience to connect with and encourage others on a similar path, transforming a personal hardship into a source of shared strength. The agency has shifted from curing to coping, from fixing to finding purpose within the new limits. The power is in the quality of the journey, not in the destination they might have originally chosen. In these deepest trials, the inner citadel becomes not just a metaphor, but a necessary refuge. When the outer world has become a place of pain or limitation, the sovereignty of your own mind is the last, best fortress. Your judgments about what is happening, the narratives you tell yourself about your own strength, the values you cling to, these are the bricks you still have to build with. No external event can force you to become cruel or selfish or devoid of love unless you assent to that transformation. This is the ultimate, unextinguishable agency. Even in profound suffering, you retain the final say over your character. You can choose patience over irritation in the face of frustration. You can choose kindness over bitterness when dealing with your own limitations or the clumsiness of others trying to help. You can choose to see your experience as part of the broader, shared human experience of fragility, which connects you to everyone else rather than isolating you. This is not a small thing, it is everything. It means that while hardship can take much from you, it cannot take your ability to choose who you are in response to it. The light of that choice, however faint it may seem at times, is a flame that no wind of misfortune can ever fully blow out. That final choice over your character is the resolution of the opening paradox. We began with a seeming contradiction, the idea that letting go could possibly increase your control. It feels counterintuitive, even backward. Letting go sounds like releasing your grip, while control is about tightening it. But through this entire journey, we have mapped the terrain of a different kind of power. The paradox dissolves when you realize you are not letting go of control itself. You are letting go of an illusion, the exhausting, impossible demand that you control the world around you. You surrender the fight against the wind, the traffic, the opinions of others, the unchangeable past. That fight was never a true expression of your agency. It was its prison. It consumed your focus, drained your energy, and left you feeling perpetually at the mercy of events. By accepting what you cannot command, you are not becoming passive. You are performing the single most strategic act of reclaiming your sovereignty. You are ceasing to be a soldier in an unwinnable war on a foreign battlefield and returning home to govern your own kingdom. The mastery you gain is over the one thing that has always and will always dictate the quality of your life, your own mind, your judgments, your values, your chosen actions in this very moment. This is the ultimate shift. We spend so much of our lives trying to control the movie screen, the images flickering past us that represent our circumstances. We shout at the characters, we protest the plot twists, we beg for a different ending. Stoic acceptance is the quiet realization that your power was never over the screen. Your power is in the projector. Your judgments are the lens through which the light passes, and your actions are the mechanism that advances the film. By letting go of the futile attempt to edit the movie that is already playing, you free yourself to master the machine that creates the experience of it all. Your life is not defined by what happens to you, but by the story you tell yourself about what happens and the choices you make from within that story. When you accept the external event, you are not agreeing with the script, you are simply acknowledging the scene you are in, so you can decide how your character will respond. That decision, that authorship of your next line and your next action, is where your true and unassailable control has always resided. It is a quieter power than commanding the world, but it is infinitely more durable. It cannot be taken by a market crash, invalidated by a critic, or lost in a storm. It is the deep, steady hum of the inner citadel, the calm certainty that no matter what appears on the screen today, you still hold the light. That inner light, however, can cast a long shadow of doubt. A critical voice might rise now, questioning the entire foundation we have built. Is this not just an elaborate form of cognitive dissonance, a sophisticated mental trick to make ourselves feel better about things we cannot change? Is Stoic acceptance merely positive thinking in a philosopher's cloak, a way to rationalize hardship by telling ourselves a prettier story? This is a serious and valid challenge, one that deserves a clear-eyed response. The distinction lies not in the goal of peace, but in the method and the metaphysical ground on which it stands. Positive thinking often asks us to overwrite reality with a preferred narrative, to affirm that everything is good even when it is not. It can become a form of denial, a forced optimism that glosses over genuine difficulty. Cognitive dissonance reduction is the mind's natural tendency to resolve the tension between conflicting beliefs, sometimes by distorting the facts to fit a more comfortable worldview. Stoic practice, in contrast, begins with a ruthless commitment to the facts as they are. It does not ask you to believe a loss is not painful or that an injustice is fair. It asks you to see those things with stark clarity first. The reframing happens not at the level of the event, but at the level of your relationship to it. You are not changing the story of what happened. You are changing the story of what it means for your capacity to act. This is not rationalization to feel better. It is reorientation to act better. The foundation is a realistic metaphysics of control, the clear-eyed dichotomy we have explored. It is not a comforting belief, but a practical observation about the architecture of human experience. Some things are up to us and most things are not. The practice is built on this observation, not on a wish. The aim is not merely emotional comfort, though tranquility is a welcome byproduct. The primary aim is virtue and effectiveness. The Stoic asks from this unchangeable starting point, what does excellence of character demand of me now? What action aligned with my deepest values is possible here? The focus shifts from how I feel about the event to what I can construct from it. Consider two people facing the same professional rejection. The person practicing mere positive thinking might repeat, "This is actually a great opportunity," while internally still feeling the sting of failure, creating a dissonance between their forced cheer and their true feeling. The Stoic approach would first acknowledge the disappointment fully, accepting it as a natural human response to an unwanted outcome. Then, from that clear platform, they would reframe not the rejection itself, but their path forward. They might think, this outcome was not within my sole control, but my preparation and effort were. I can now choose to seek feedback, to refine my skills, to persist. The good feeling is not manufactured, it is earned through the regained sense of purposeful direction. The reframing is cognitive, yes, but it is disciplined and evidence-based, rooted in the real distinction between what was theirs and what was not. It is the difference between painting a broken window to look whole and carefully measuring the frame so you can install a new pane. One covers the problem with illusion, the other engages with reality to craft a solution. The proof is in the action it generates. A philosophy of rationalization leads to passivity, a quiet acceptance of things as they are because we have convinced ourselves they are for the best. A philosophy of disciplined reframing leads to agency, a clear-eyed acceptance that fuels purposeful motion within the sphere that remains yours. The value is measured not by how good it makes you feel in the moment, but by the integrity and effectiveness of the life you build over time. This philosophy of reframing is not an abstract theory. It is a practical skill you can build like any other. The muscle that powers it all is daily discernment, the simple act of sorting your experiences into those two foundational boxes. Think of it as mental hygiene, a brief evening review that clears away the debris of the day's reactions. The practice is straightforward, but its cumulative effect is the very architecture of your inner citadel. Each evening, perhaps as you wind down, bring to mind one moment from the day where you felt a spike of frustration, anxiety, or resentment. Do not judge the feeling, simply identify it. Then ask the clarifying question, what was the core trigger of this feeling? Was it a delayed train, a curt email, a personal worry about the future? Now apply the dichotomy, place that trigger in its proper category. The train schedule is an external system, not up to you. The content of the email is someone else's choice, also not up to you. The worry about a future event is an attempt to control an outcome that has not yet happened and is influenced by countless variables. This act of categorization is the first exercise of your agency. It is you, the captain, calmly identifying which part of the storm is the sea and which part is the ship. The next step is to observe your own mental shift or the telling lack of one. Did you, in the moment, expend energy arguing with the uncontrollable? Did you spin narratives about the train conductor's incompetence or the sender's rude intentions? Note that is the old pattern, the energy leak. Then, gently pivot. Given that this trigger was not up to you, what response would have been aligned with your agency? For the delayed train, it might have been using the time to listen to a podcast or simply observing your surroundings without internal protest. For the email, it might have been acknowledging the sender's tone as their own, and then deciding on a professional, unemotional reply focused solely on the content that needed addressing. You are not chastising yourself for your initial reaction. You are training your mind to see the fork in the road more clearly next time. The power is in the repetition. Agency does not bloom from a single grand realization, but from hundreds of these small, conscious categorizations. Each time you correctly identify an external trigger and consciously redirect your focus inward, you are laying another brick in your fortress of calm. You are strengthening the neural pathway that leads not to frantic reaction, but to considered response. Over days and weeks, this practice changes your default setting. The traffic jam begins to register less as a personal affront and more as a simple condition of the commute, a signal to turn your attention to the audiobook or the music you enjoy. The critical comment shifts from being a dagger to your worth to being a piece of data you can choose to examine or discard. This is not suppression, it is liberation. You are freeing your mental resources from the full-time job of managing the unmanageable, so they are fully available for the things you truly can build, influence, and love. The daily review is where you audit your energy expenditures, and in doing so, you gradually become the wise steward of your own power. The most ambitious among us often view acceptance with deep suspicion. It seems like a sedative for the hungry soul, a compromise for those unwilling to fight tooth and nail for their vision. But this is a critical misunderstanding of the mechanism. True ambition is not a blind, thrashing force. It is a laser, and acceptance is the stabilizing tripod that keeps that laser aimed precisely at the target, no matter how the ground shakes. It does not dampen your drive, it channels it. Think of any great athlete, inventor, or artist at the peak of their powers. Their ambition is ferocious, but their focus is serene. They are not distracted by the roar of the crowd or the misstep of a competitor. They have accepted those elements as part of the environment. That acceptance is what allows every ounce of their energy to flow into the execution of their craft. The ambitious person who lacks this practice is like a sprinter who keeps looking at the runners in the other lanes. Their energy is divided between their own stride and a frantic, comparative anxiety. They are trying to control two races at once, their own and everyone else's, and they will lose both. Stoic acceptance teaches you to run your race on your track. You accept that the other runners are there, that the weather is what it is, that the starting pistol has already fired. These are the conditions. Your ambition is now liberated to express itself purely in the power of your legs and the rhythm of your breath. This is how acceptance becomes ambition's greatest ally. It protects your most valuable resource, your focused attention, from the constant drain of external noise. Consider a young entrepreneur launching their first company. Their ambition burns bright. Without acceptance, that fire is easily scattered. A negative review from a first customer feels like a personal indictment, sending them into a spiral of self-doubt for days. A competitor's aggressive move triggers panic and reactive, poorly considered strategy shifts. The fluctuating market becomes a source of sleepless anxiety. Their energy, the very fuel of their ambition, is being burned off as emotional exhaust. Now imagine the same entrepreneur, armed with the practice of acceptance. They still read the negative review, but they apply the dichotomy. The customer's subjective experience is not up to them to control. What is up to them is the factual data in the feedback and their own decision to learn from it or let it go. They accept the review as a single data point, not a verdict. This mental move conserves their emotional capital. That conserved energy is then available for their ambition's true work, refining their product, connecting with their next customer, or improving their marketing message. They accept the competitor's move as a fact of the business landscape, not a declaration of war. This allows them to respond from strategy, not from fear. They accept the market's inherent uncertainty. This frees them to focus on the variables they can actually influence, like their operational efficiency and their value proposition. Their ambition is no longer a wild flame buffeted by every wind. It is a forge fire contained and directed, used to temper the steel of their enterprise. The drive is undiminished, but it is now intelligent, resilient, and sustainable. It is ambition with a calm mind. This is the reconciliation. Acceptance does not ask you to want less. It asks you to worry less about what you cannot command, so you can want more effectively. Your ambition is directed inward toward perfecting your own contribution, your own skill, your own character. You stop trying to control the reception of your work and pour everything into the excellence of the work itself. You stop trying to force a specific outcome and become obsessed with the quality of the process that leads there. In this state, you are far more formidable. Setbacks become information, not identity. Criticism becomes potential fertilizer, not poison. The unpredictable winds of fortune become simply the conditions of the voyage, not reasons to abandon the helm. Your ambition, grounded in acceptance, gains a patience and a persistence that raw hunger alone can never provide. It is the difference between a flash of lightning and the steady, enduring power of the sun. But ambition focused inward inevitably turns its gaze outward, toward the community it inhabits. The most powerful critique of a philosophy centered on personal tranquility is that it might encourage a quiet retreat from the world's problems. If I perfect my inner citadel, why should I care about the crumbling walls of the city around me? This is where Stoicism reveals its profound social dimension, transforming personal agency into a force for communal good. The key, as always, lies in that precise application of the dichotomy. Stoic acceptance in the face of social injustice does not mean passive acceptance of the injustice itself. It means accepting the current, undeniable reality of that injustice as your starting point. You are not agreeing with it, you are not condoning it, you are refusing to look away or pretend it does not exist because the truth is painful. This clear-eyed acknowledgement is the opposite of apathy. It is the necessary first step for any meaningful action. You cannot fix a broken system you are still denying is broken. Acceptance here is the act of reading the societal map accurately, seeing the fault lines and the inequities marked upon it. This is the hard ground of truth. From that ground, your agency pivots with fierce intention toward the vast sphere of what is up to you. You cannot single-handedly control centuries of structural bias, the entrenched opinions of millions, or the immediate decisions of every powerful institution. Those are external winds of immense force. What you can control are your own actions within that system, your advocacy, your vote, your financial support of causes you believe in, the way you raise your children to be more just, the conversations you have within your own circle to gently persuade, and above all, the personal example you set through your own choices. This is the Stoic path of social engagement. It is the work of the archer who sees the target is unjustly placed for many, and instead of raging at the unfairness of the field, focuses on training more archers, speaking to the officials who set the targets, and ensuring their own every shot is true, to demonstrate what is possible. Consider the historical example of the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius. He accepted the immense burdens of leading an empire rife with conflict, plague, and complexity, not as a personal reward, but as a duty presented by fate. His personal writings, his meditations, are a record of him constantly reminding himself to focus on his own virtue, his justice, his patience, and his endurance within the maelstrom of events he could not fully control. His agency was exercised in how he showed up each day to govern, not in the fantasy of creating a perfect, conflict-free Rome. In a modern context, imagine someone deeply concerned about environmental degradation. The non-Stoic approach might be to drown in despair over the scale of the problem, to become furious at corporations or governments, and to eventually burn out in a state of bitter inaction, feeling that any individual effort is pointless. The Stoic approach begins with acceptance. Yes, the problem is vast and systemic. Yes, the current trajectory is alarming. These are the facts of the landscape. This acceptance is not a surrender to doom. It is the clearing of the emotional fog of despair. Now, from that clear platform, the question of agency arises. What is up to me? I can control my own consumption patterns. I can control how I use my voice, whether in my community meeting or at the ballot box. I can control supporting organizations doing effective work. I can control educating myself and sharing that knowledge without aggression. I may not control the global outcome, but I control whether I live in alignment with my values on this issue. This focused action is far more sustainable and effective than the cycle of outrage and exhaustion. It transforms you from a powerless spectator of a tragedy into a purposeful actor in a drama of change, however small your part may seem. Your agency in community stems from the same root as your personal agency, the disciplined redirecting of effort from the uncontrollable to the controllable. You accept the world as it is, not because you like it, but because you need an accurate map to navigate toward the world as it could be. The fight for justice is not abandoned. It is simply fought on the only ground where you can ever truly stand, with the only weapons you can ever truly wield, your own reasoned actions and your own unwavering example. This ancient distinction between what is ours to command and what is not echoes powerfully in modern halls of healing. The psychological concept of radical acceptance, a core skill in dialectical behavior therapy, walks this very same path. It teaches that suffering is amplified not by pain itself, but by our non-acceptance of reality. When we fight against the facts of a situation, especially a painful one, we add a layer of emotional agony on top of the original hardship. Radical acceptance is the practice of acknowledging life, even its most difficult moments, without judgment or protest. It does not mean liking or approving of the pain. It means ceasing to argue with what has already happened or what currently is, in order to stop that secondary suffering. This is the Stoic discipline of Assent, translated into a therapeutic framework for building emotional resilience. It is the same liberating move, freeing up mental energy previously spent in futile resistance and redirecting it toward coping, healing, and building a life worth living. The goal in both traditions is not passive resignation, but the creation of a stable platform from which effective action becomes possible. Another profound echo is found in a simple, widely known plea, the Serenity Prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This distillation, embraced by countless individuals across cultures and beliefs, captures the entire Stoic operating system in a single, heartfelt sentence. It acknowledges the human struggle, honors the need for both acceptance and action, and places supreme value on the discernment between the two. That wisdom to know the difference is the lifelong practice of the dichotomy. These parallels are not coincidental. They point to a fundamental truth about the architecture of human well-being. Across centuries, from Roman philosophers to modern therapists and spiritual communities, we keep rediscovering the same liberating pattern. Our peace and our power are found not in dominating the uncontrollable, but in clearly seeing it, accepting its existence, and then investing our full humanity into the domain we can actually influence. This cross-disciplinary resonance suggests we are not just studying a historical philosophy, but touching upon a principle of psychological health. When we stop demanding that reality conform to our wishes, we start building a life that can thrive within reality's actual parameters. That shift is where agency truly begins. This journey began with a common and costly misunderstanding. We saw acceptance as a quiet surrender, a step back from the fight for control. But the landscape looks entirely different from the other side. Stoic acceptance is not a retreat from your power. It is the precise act of surveying the territory and drawing a bright, unwavering line around the only kingdom you were ever meant to rule, the self. Your judgments, your values, your chosen actions in this very moment, these are your true domain. Everything outside that line, the weather of events and the choices of others, is simply the environment in which your sovereignty operates. By accepting what lies beyond the border, you are not giving anything up. You are finally stopping the endless, exhausting campaign to annex lands you can never hold. You are recalling your troops, your energy, your focus, and you are stationing them all within your own walls. This is the ultimate increase in agency. Your power was never about moving mountains. It was always about mastering the climber. The strength you once spent trying to command the wind is now yours to invest in adjusting your sails with skill and grace. You move from a life of reaction, jerked around by every external string, to a life of authorship where you hold the pen that writes your character's next line. The peace you feel is not the stillness of indifference. It is the quiet hum of a system operating at peak efficiency, no longer wasting fuel on phantom battles. Your effectiveness grows because your attention is no longer divided. You see the board as it is, and you play your piece with clear intention. This is the profound shift from seeking control over life to exercising authority over your lived experience. The invitation now is to move from understanding into practice. For the next 7 days, make this your simple experiment. Each time you feel a spike of frustration, anxiety, or resistance, pause. Ask the single clarifying question, what here is truly up to me? Draw that bright line. Accept what falls outside it as a condition of the landscape, a fact to be navigated, not a problem to be undone. Then pivot all of your conscious effort toward what lies inside your circle. Your next thought, your next word, your next small, intentional action. Do not worry about grand transformations. Just watch for 1 week what happens to your energy, your focus, and your sense of calm when you stop fighting the wind and start steering the ship. Observe the shift in your personal effectiveness. Notice the quiet expansion of your peace. This is not philosophy as theory. It is philosophy as a tool for living. The line is yours to draw. The domain is yours to command. Step inside and feel your true power begin.